What's up, everyone? Josh White here with the HeroFront podcast, and I'm just fired up right now and humbled because I just got done talking to one of my good friends and mentors, Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley, stationed at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Sergeant Cooley had a very low moment early on in her life as an airman. It's something that's really hard to talk about, and yet Sergeant Cooley understands that others hearing her journey could really learn something from it. It's very relatable, and I wanted to thank her for sharing that with us here today. I think you're going to really love this episode because of how transparent and open she is with her own struggles, and she just the way she expresses it is just so honest. It's just very honest, and and anyone can relate to this story. She talks about how most things are temporary, right? And sometimes we got to remind ourselves of that. She goes into some of her self-love strategies, and that it's very important to know what your resources are and to use them. They're there for a reason. She's also big on controlling only the things that you can control in your life. So she hits on a lot of really good strategies from someone who went from wanting to end their own life to living their absolute best life. So without further ado, this is the hero's journey of my friend, Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley. Let's get after it. So Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley, we have her on the HeroFront podcast today. And let me tell you all the listeners out there, all 5 of you, she is a freaking rock star, okay? And her journey is it's kind of similar to mine, where we were both at Whiteman, and that's where we really bloomed, right? That's where we really took off. And I love Whiteman. I love that base. I love the community, the family environment. It's like you're overseas kind of feel to it, because you're in the middle of a cow field. So in a way, you are overseas, and no one wants to visit you because you're in the middle of a cow field. But you make the best friends there, and you really truly grow, and people believe in you, and the community. Gosh, I miss that. I know you miss that too.
Yes, absolutely.
So she's at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, also known as the Shady J, is what I've always heard it called. Not sure what that means. Never been there, but I heard it's in a beautiful area up in the mountains there. And so I asked her to be on here because she's a freaking kick butt rock star who is someone I look up to. I think you're going to be a future chief. And I don't say that to everybody because that's just a thing that, people just like to throw around loosely sometimes. I don't throw that around loosely. I truly think you're going to be a chief one day. And I hope you are, because I think you're transparent. You lead from your heart. You're honest with yourself and other people. And that's what we need. That's what the airmen appreciate. So, hey, we're following your lead, Sergeant Cooley. And your husband is the coolest guy ever, former honor guardsman. The guy is jacked, always posting gym inspirational pictures. I love the guy. His name is Glenn Cooley, and they have a beautiful son together. What's your son's name?
Elijah.
Elijah. And he's just the cutest little boy ever. And okay, but I have to point, I might add this to the show notes. They have matching Dragon Ball Z tattoos. Now, what's crazy about that is we're at the Air Force Ball at Whiteman, and I bring up having children is kind of like in Dragon Ball Z, where they do that little dance with the earrings and they touch their fingers and they merge into one person. That's kind of what having a kid feels like. And right after I say that, they pull up their pant legs and show me that exact cartoon image on both of their legs. And immediately,
true story,
I was floored. My reality was shattered because that was the coolest tattoo I've ever seen and will ever see in my entire life. All right, Blythe. So, like I gave you the warning ahead of time that I'm going to put you through the Hero's Gauntlet. And that is 4 random questions. Well, not really random. They're random to you. They're not random to me. But 4 questions that I have for you. Question number 1. Who is your hero?
Can I have a tie?
Yes.
Okay. So my first hero, my number one since day one, my mom.
I knew you were going to say that.
Everyone probably says a parent, but you don't realize how much of an impact that a parent has on your life until you kind of become of age to kind of comprehend it, if that makes any sense. Me and my mom weren't close until probably when I joined the Air Force. I would say I kind of took her for granted in a way. But when I was able to kind of move out, live on my own, I started to really understand the sacrifices that she made for me, my brother, and my sister. For a while, my mom's divorced, remarried, so she did it on her own for a little bit. And I look up to her for that. And like I said, you don't really realize it until you become in an age where you can kind of understand it.
Yeah, when you walk in their shoes, you start to think back to those times, right?
Absolutely. And then when becoming a mom, almost 3 years ago, it just brings even a bigger light of, how much sacrifice that she made. So most strongest person I know, a most stubborn person I know, but I get all my traits from her. So I am her mini me, literally, physically, and all the values that she bestowed on me. So
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yes.
And I knew you were going to say her because I went back and watched your Whiteman Air Force Base video, which I'll put that in the show notes too. But in that video, when you talk about your mom, you kind of start smiling, like it's bringing you joy, reflecting on your time with her. And I don't know, I could tell, just by the way you talk about her, that she's someone special to you. So who's number two, or tied?
I'll be my husband. My husband, 100%. Glenn, yes. He brings out the best in me, like literally the best I could possibly be, is because he came in my life. Strong-willed, determined, supportive. We co-parent, so we're a team, 110%. He makes me whole. And I look up to him. Like, I know there's a rank difference between me and my husband, but he is the best supervisor, the best leader. I go to him for everything, for advice and how I handle my day-to-day, how I deal with my airmen's stressors, their trials and tribulations, even my work, my work stuff. And everything he says is always on point. He gets me thinking in a different way that sometimes I allowed my judgments or my opinions to cloud. So I lean on him heavily.
That's beautiful. I feel the same way about the guy. Had him on the team. I couldn't, this is when I was really struggling to get a grip on honor guard. I'm trying things that are failing, nothing's sticking. What can I do to get through to the airmen? What am I missing? And Glenn, he was that person to bridge the gap, because he was an NCO, I think one of the only, if not the only NCO amongst like 30 airmen. And so he bridged that gap. So he had that special bond with him, and then he could translate info to me and then back down to them in a way that, was very effective. So he definitely took us to the next level. So shout out to Glenn Cooley. We love you, buddy. Okay. Question number 2. What message here in present day would you send back to Airman Blythe? I don't know what your last name was then. What was your last name?
Micah.
Micah. Oh, nice.
Micah.
That's a unique last name. That's cool. Okay, so what would Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley say to Airman Blythe Micah?
Take it one day at a time.
Oh, I like that.
Take it one day at a time. And even now, I still tell myself that to do today. There are times where I felt like the world was going to fall and crash down on me if it hadn't already. You know what I mean? Like there were moments where I crashed and burned hard. And if I would have told myself then what I'm telling myself now on a day-to-day, on those hard days, I feel like I could have done a little bit better. I feel like I wouldn't have had a rougher go as I did as an airman.
Gotcha. I like that. You're very insightful. Okay. I'm asking you deep questions too, so and you're doing great.
Let him rip.
Okay, this one's really random. What do you think your son will be when he grows up?
I don't know if I would say I know what he's gonna be, but I can tell you what I hope he's gonna be.
Okay,
I hope he's gonna be happy.
Oh,
I hope whatever he decides in life, that it brings him joy. So whatever that looks like for him. And I hope he always knows that me and his dad always support him and will always have his back throughout everything. So I know he's going to be happy. That's what I want him to be, happy.
yeah,
that's
Blythe, you're blowing me away here. And you're almost making me cry. So let's go to the next question.
Okay.
And this is the last one. What book do you recommend the most to people?
Ooh, I'm gonna say the first one that comes to mind is the one I'm reading right now. I'm almost done with it. It's called Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Oh snap! You got the Matthew McConaughey. I saw him on Audible. That book.
Yes. If you get on Audible, he reads it.
Oh, I can't get enough of that guy's voice. I got to get that Audible like tonight.
Yes. So many great lessons he's learned throughout his life, and he just kind of spills it out. And there was times where I'm reading it in my car and had to pull over so I could write it down. Like that's how much good stuff's in it. So yes, if you have to pick up a book, that would be the book to pick up.
I'm getting it. You sold me on it. And I saw him on Joe Rogan, and like I watched one of the clips, and he's like, "Yeah, I always know I'm not doing so good when I lose my wink." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, when you lose your wink. And I was like, "Whoa, I'm not even cool enough to have a wink, but I kind of get it." Okay. So, Blythe, you've passed the Hero's Gauntlet with flying colors. Thank you for that. And now we want to hear your story. We want to hear how you got to the point that you're at today. You went through some hard times and you learned from them and you shared them with people. And so many people were inspired by your journey. And I want them to hear that journey. So why don't you run us through the hero's journey of Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley?
So went through basic, went through tech school, things were smooth. I joined right out of high school. So I didn't know anything besides living at home with my mom, going to high school, and I joined the military. And I joined at 17, the summer of my junior year of high school. I have two uncles that are in the military. One happened to be a recruiter at the time. He kind of just talked me into it. I felt like it was the best move. College would be hard for me out of high school because my family wasn't able to help. Didn't have a lot of money. So military seemed like the way to go. Joined, got to my first duty station, McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. It was close to home, so that was good.
You're from Iowa?
I am from Iowa.
Okay.
So being close to home, being close to my mom seemed like a good thing at the time. I think being away from home in basic training was kind of like I got real homesick. So I was really glad to be, a relatively quick driving distance from home. From a really, really small town in Iowa, graduating class of 50.
Holy cow.
So, yeah. So I guess I really didn't know what the world was like outside of that small town. So you call me naive, gullible, whatever the case may be. But I was definitely that. And, going into military, being surrounded by people from all walks of life, different mentalities, different values, different characters, right? So I kind of latched on to people I definitely was codependent around the age of 18. I didn't really have a self, like I haven't developed myself at that point in time. So I latched onto a lot of people and kind of let people use me, kind of walk all over me, and tried to adapt who I was based off people's reactions to me. And it ended up biting me in the butt, like hard. People act a certain way to your face and then not so the same, to other people. So had a boyfriend, thought I was in love, 18, and he crushed me. He crushed my soul. Decided to hook up with other people. And I was in denial for a very long time. But then one night, I'll never forget watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the lies, the cheating, the fakeness of everyone around me. And, I attempted suicide. That felt like the only way out. And long and behold, that boyfriend at the time found me, took me to the ER and saved my life. Went through a lot of therapy. And the shirt at the time said I had two choices. It can help me out of the military, or it can get me the help I need to stay in. And so I knew I didn't want to get out. So I got the help I needed to stay in. And that was the choice I made. And I can't even explain the type of emotions or feelings I had throughout that process. Because it was like scraping down everything who I thought I was to try to discover who I truly was. And finding out who my true friends were and like who actually cared and loved Blythe Micah at the time. And I'll tell you, there wasn't many, but I was okay with it. I was okay with it because you only need one person to have your back, one person to hear your truth, one person to support you. That's all you need. I don't care what anyone says. You don't need a crowd. So I found about three. One was my mom. And I made healthy relationships for the first time, probably my whole life. I just didn't realize it until I hit rock bottom. It took me that to realize that. And it was a good feeling, after everything was said and done, to kind of figure out or try to start finding who I was. And I couldn't have done without those people. I really couldn't. I can't explain, and I'm sure other people may have felt it, but to tell yourself that you don't want to do this anymore and then go through with trying to make that a reality, it's rough. It's rough.
Wow, that is so tough. That's even hard to hear, just knowing you now and picturing you in that kind of moment, that kind of weakness. And they say suicide attempts are just that. They're in that moment.
They are.
If you can get that person through that moment, they have a good chance of, surviving and moving on in their life and learning these coping skills. So it's scary when that moment happens, and you're just so vulnerable that you get broke down to nothing, like you said. When you initially woke up, what was going through your head?
I'm gonna be frank, I was mad. I was so mad because that's not what I wanted. At that moment in time, that's not what I wanted. I did not want to wake up, But then that kind of turned into shame. Shame that I allowed myself get there. If that makes any sense. Shame that I didn't do what I should have done to prevent that from happening. But when something like that happens, like you say, it's in the moment, your mind is so focused on what got you to that moment. If that makes it, the thought that it's just a moment isn't true, because it feels like you're drowning and you can't get up. You can't get to shore. So you don't even think that that's a possibility. If that makes sense.
How do you make that switch in your head then? How do you go from that to having hope?
A lot of patience, a lot of therapy, a lot of people who trust you, to find a way to deal with it. Therapy, learning how to deal with it. That's really ultimately what it comes down to. Okay, you kind of learn what that rock bottom is, like what that daunting, scary feeling is, and then you find ways, or learn ways to cope. You learn ways to cope.
Wow. And one of those ways to learn to cope is understanding that most things are temporary. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I kind of hit on it a little bit, but like sometimes people get focused on what's going on in the moment and don't realize that it's just a moment. It's just a moment in your life. If we are blessed enough to have a long life, is you got time to learn, you got time to make choices, you got time to cope, you got time to deal, and you got people there on hopefully in your corner, right? So things are temporary. Everything's temporary. Everything passes. It's what choices you make to get past it, to get you to the point where you need to be. I can't harp on that enough. I don't know how many times I've told myself, let me just do what I need to do. Let me check that box, whatever it is, the task, the fight, the making up with your spouse, whatever, it's going to get done, or you're going to get to the finish line, and try not to focus on that war path that you have to get there, to get through, to get there.
You got to take it day by day.
You do. You have to take it day by day, because it'll eat you. It will eat at you. And sorry about the dogs. It will eat at you. And if you allow it to eat at you, and you allow to become permanent, right? Allow it to permanently affect you in your day to day, then it's hard to deal with it. It really is. So
it is. It makes me think of special forces training, how none of that, it's physical at first, but they wear them out pretty quickly, and the rest is just mental. Mm-hmm. And how they get through it is just one exercise at a time. Like, okay, I have to carry these 2 jugs 300 yards. And they don't think of the whole day. They take it, their mind breaks it up into little pieces. I can just carry these jugs 300 yards. Okay, now I can run with this, this rucksack for 1 mile. And they just take it one step at a time. And that's how mentally, at least that's what they told me, how they get through it. So I think it's kind of similar to that in life.
It really is. And I don't know if it's just like the perfectionist or I'm very organized. I make lists for everything, like everything.
Do you have a list in front of you right now?
Maybe. I have my thing my interview that I gave you, and I'm looking at it, and I'm kind of checking the boxes as we talk. And I don't know why, but just putting a checkbox next to that one thing on my list, it feels.
Blythe, we got to get rid of the dogs.
No, I'm so sorry.
They're so loud.
Let me get them. But yeah, just checking something off on the task makes me feel good. I don't. It's just that's
just
how
you.
Yeah, that's just me. And everyone has to find their little thing that kind of gets them through the day, and that's mine.
Yeah, I have ADD, so I have to make a list every morning, or I won't. I'll start something, not finish it, move on. Start something, not finish it, move on. That's how a person with attention issues works. So I follow that list, and that's how I stick to it and get things done, and just knock one task out at a time. And it's very helpful.
And that's the way it is with life stuff, just knowing that it is temporary, and life does go on. It truly does, no matter where your mental clarity or whatever's clouding your judgment at the moment. Just remember that life does go on.
So, when you first woke up from that situation, you were upset that you were still there. And then thinking about you now, you have this amazing relationship with your husband. You have this beautiful son together. You have this awesome life.
Oh yeah.
How does it feel after all this time looking back? How does it feel knowing where you're at now?
I feel like I can literally do anything. I wouldn't say invincible. I don't think anyone's invincible. But I feel like I'm the type of person that if I put my mind to it and I put enough, elbow grease into it, I can do it. I can do it. And sometimes it takes my husband to remind me, I have my moments, but I can't tell you how proud I am of myself. Like, it's a feeling that will constantly put a smile on my face to know that I can come from the very, very, very bottom. Like, that was the lowest I will ever possibly be in my whole life, to the top. This is the best my life has ever been.
That's amazing. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Straight up. It makes me happy that just hearing that. And I mean, it gives me hope. It would give anyone hope to come from that rock bottom, starting from scratch with everything, to living your best life, more than you ever thought possible. I mean, that is a beautiful story. So I'm so thankful to know you and to hear that story. It fires me up. It motivates me. I know anyone listening to that is going to appreciate it. So how does self-love and knowing your resources play into getting you out of that hole?
So I was in denial at that one point in the stage of my life. I don't know if I didn't feel like I needed help. I didn't feel that I needed to talk about it. I felt like I was strong enough, young and dumb at 18, that I could deal with it on my own. And I kicked myself for that, because if I would have just told my mom, if I would have just told my supervisor, if I would have just told someone just anyone that I could trust, that I may not have gotten to that point. And I didn't love myself at that time. I truly didn't love me. And I didn't notice or admit it until, I woke up in the hospital bed. So kind of realizing that, coming to grips with it, because there was a big acceptance phase in that, accepting it, accepting I can't do it all on my own, and reaching out and finding those resources, being okay with saying, I need help. I really need help. And part of it was forced on me, I'm not going to lie, because I was having to go check the boxes to make sure that I could stay in the military. So it was a rough go. but once I started to realize that that's something I need to move on, to turn the page in that chapter in my life, I started looking for things to help me, looking for ways to love myself again, trying to figure out why I'm important, because I was, and I just wasn't holding myself like that. I didn't put myself as a priority at that time. So I started to figure out ways how to make myself a priority.
And what does that look
started
like?
To so for me, I had to get hobbies. I had to find things that put a smile on my face. You know what I mean? But not just, there was things I could do with a group of people, but what was hardest for me is finding things I could do alone, to be comfortable in a space by myself, because I was very codependent. I didn't like being alone. If I was alone, I was always on the phone. You know what I mean? So learning to be comfortable with myself and doing things that allowed me to be by myself. So as cliche as it is, I started going out to eat by myself. And let me tell you, that was so awkward at first, not having that person on the other side of the table, but it was nice. It was nice to have that quietness, that time to think. I would journal a lot. I started journaling a lot through that process to kind of write down my feelings at that time. And it helped me process. Sometimes when you think, your mind starts to become a hamster wheel and you can't figure out how to get off and truly evaluate what's going on in your life. So journaling was a big thing for me. That was a big self-love thing for me. I started reading some more. I used to read a lot in high school and I kind of fell out of it. And then I started getting back into that again. I started playing just random computer games to kind of get myself by myself, focused on different things. Because something I learned in therapy was distraction. And it's probably one of my go-tos, when I feel overwhelmed or where I feel stressed or I feel like I got to remind myself, take one day at a time, I distract myself. So I find things to get my mind in a place where I can start truly processing what's going on rather than reacting, because I am a reactor and I allow my emotions to dictate my actions a lot. I'm a very emotional person. I've learned that about myself. So it could be a weakness or a strength, however way you look at it. But sometimes it becomes a weakness of mine because I do react based on my emotions rather than thought. So that's when journaling comes in. It helps me kind of write down my emotions, write down my thoughts, and it kind of gives me clarity. Resources, I started looking for all the resources. Mental health was my first one. Obviously, I've been in and out of mental health since that point. I'm not afraid to go today. If I need to go today, I go. I have no second thoughts about that, because the therapists that I met in mental health throughout my career, they're why I'm here. They got me to the point. They helped me build coping skills and et cetera. I started doing those private orgs, top 3, 5, 6. I started getting into those, and I started meeting like-minded people.
I love that. You're getting out, you're working on those pillars.
Yes.
I mean, I don't care how corny it sounds. The pillars are legit, straight up.
They are.
Physical, working out, how that helps your endorphins and build your confidence. And I don't care who you are. You get a good workout in, you can do anything that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, social, getting out into the private orgs. Again, when I was an airman, I didn't do that either, and I was super unhappy. That's another story for when I'm on someone's podcast. But but I'm all about that now. Like I want to be everyone's biggest cheerleader now. I want to cheer them on. I want to get them out of their comfort zone, because I know how good it feels when you start making those connections, that support system.
Yep.
You don't even realize it's a support system till it's gone. And then once, you know, once you move or you PCS or they move, and then you kind of realize like, wow, like just those random times running into these folks have brought me so much happiness. Just having them there to talk to ask questions to, and building that support system is just so important. So you're touching on a lot of those. And it's music to my ears, because I've been down a similar path of self-discovery and who am I? Like, who am I? When you get out on your own and you're young and naive and you didn't truly know who you were, you know, and sometimes we're just not ready for the things life is throwing at us.
Yeah.
You're from your home and your family's far away, and they feel like they're on another planet at that point, right? Because you never see them. You don't have a lot of money. You don't have a lot of leave. And suddenly you're on your own and you got to figure out who you are. And it can be really tough and very lonely. And so the more that we share stories like this and recognize those behaviors in, you know, people that come after us, the young, you know, younger airmen, you know, you can recognize that those, like, you can see yourself in them, and not always in a good way. So it kind of tips you off to kind of take them to the side, you know?
Absolutely. And I don't hesitate. I always pull people in my office. How you doing? Let's talk. Like, it seems like something's bothering you. And yeah, I don't know if it's because I see myself in that, you know, like I was there at one point. And I have to remind them too, like, I was where you're at. You know what I mean? Like, nothing has changed. We're just different ages.
Right. Or when they think like you've done everything perfect in your life.
Yeah, no.
And then you have to then you got to give them that reality check. Like, actually, it's full of failures.
It really is. But it's full of lessons learned too. You know what I'm saying? So
maybe I should have said lessons learned. That's what I meant. Okay. But no, you're right. And it's so important to share those stories. Like, I don't know about you, but when I came up as an airman, that was not shared at all. Like, if anything, it was the opposite. It was, you must think I got it all figured out. I will make sure y'all think I got this all figured out, and I'm not going to share anything difficult. And that was the culture. And I didn't do great in that culture because I'm like an open book and I'm emotional too. So I did really bad in that culture, but I stuck in there and I hung in there. And eventually that culture shifted to expressing ourselves, being open, telling our story to others and letting them learn something from it. And on the flip side, I love hearing stories. I always have. I've always listened to stories like yours, and it stays with me. You know what I mean? It shapes my decisions hearing those stories. So I think now more than ever, it's really important that we keep encouraging that. Okay, so that brings us to, you can only control what you can control. Sounds simple.
Sounds really simple.
It's easier said than done.
It really is. Whenever my airmen have a moment or, you know, like frustration, whatever the case may be, whether it's personal, work, whatever, that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. You can only control what you can control. And to the point where they start saying it before I can say it. But it's so true. You control your emotions, you control your feelings, you control how you react to everything. No one can make you mad. You make yourself mad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's your decision.
Like,
you don't realize it.
110%.
I hate, and then when you're mad, you hate hearing that even more. But you got to tell someone that when they're not upset. I've learned. Yes. It's your reaction that's driving those strong feelings. And that's so important to keep that in mind. Like, this person's trying to bait me in on this situation. They're trying to, tick me off. And at that point, it is up to you how you handle it. Yeah. And I think you can surprise yourself with how to handle it, right? Like there's certain individuals that test me to the point where I feel like I'm about to snap, right?
Oh, yeah.
I go take a walk and I say, you know what? I'm going to change my approach. I'm going to be so nice to them and genuinely care about helping them right now. And I'm going to see what happens. And I'll do that. I'll play that game. And I'll come back cooled off and I'll approach them caring questions. What can I do to help you? What can I want to help, and come at them like that. And the whole thing diffuses and the whole vibe changes.
It does.
And then you're just like, wow, like that could have went in such crazy directions, but it's fixed. We figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your choice. You made that happen. So I try to remind myself of that. I take a walk or I remove myself from the situation. What else comes to mind with controlling?
With that?
Yeah.
I say it all the time. I live and breathe it, but I have so many slip ups. So we are not perfect. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I know me personally, I forget that. And that makes forgiving yourself a little bit harder. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows, like, that, like, I say it and it seems real easy, but when it comes into the heat of the moment, or, you have that time to think about it, and sometimes you just don't, and that's okay. It's okay. But what you have to do is when the emotions are down to a normal level, when your thought process is working, have to realize and check yourself. And it's okay to admit you're wrong. It's okay to ask for forgiveness, not just from the person that maybe you overreacted, but for yourself. You have to learn to forgive yourself. So despite, that statement, you can only control what you can control, and that's true, but not all of us are our 100% perfect selves all the time. And so I don't want anyone to forget that.
Yep, you will make mistakes, and man, it feels good to just admit those mistakes too sometimes, right? We're always in such denial of we're terrified to make mistakes, especially in the military. That's like, we hate that. But it can be so freeing too to just come to someone and say, I'm not good at this. I'm failing at this. I need help. And once you get those words out, I'm telling you, you will start feeling better admitting those failures or those struggles, should I say.
Yes. And like, you think that, especially as a young airman, that you can't do that. You can't do it. And I think even as I go up in rank, I feel like I'm more okay with admitting my struggles than I was as an airman. And you would think it'd be complete opposite. But I'm okay to wave the white flag now. And I don't know if that's just comes with age, with wisdom that I've grown over the years. But back when I was an airman, that wasn't something I would even be okay with or comfortable with, was admitting my failures or admitting that I'm wrong. I did not do that at a young age.
I didn't either. And it's so stressful to live that way. So, not only is it important for us to lead the example and let people know that we need help, we need your help, tell them. I think it's good example for them to, for anyone that comes after us to ask for help too, especially if we're setting that example. But yeah, I'm right there with you. And I just did it the other day. If I'm being completely honest with you, I was feeling quite overwhelmed. I've been out the career field for so long, and I started failing, and I'm not used to that, and it scared me. And I felt backed into a corner. I felt like I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any support system. And so no one really knew what I was all about. I didn't have the reputation like I did at Whiteman. And so I was like, this is not good. I met a senior master sergeant at the top 3 that I connected with really well. And she just happened to come by and say hi to me. And I was like, can I just talk to you real quick? Because I realized like my mistakes are going to come out one way or another. I'm either going to explode. I'm either going to lose my mind or screw something up or both. If I don't get this out now. And she's amazing. She sat down and we talked for like an hour. She just let me just word vomit everything. And I can't even, I made a turn after that day. After talking to her, the next day I was fired up, ready to get back after it. And
right. Like it feels like a weight is lifted when 100%. You kind of allow yourself to be vulnerable like that.
100%. So if she's listening, she knows who she is. And she'll be on the podcast too, future episode. All right, Blythe. We've had a great conversation. We're almost out of time here. So I have one final question for you. And that is, there is airmen right now that feel exactly how you did when you were an airman, whether it's heartbreak or being away from home or losing a loved one. There's someone out there right now feeling the way that you did as an airman. Airman Micah did. What would you tell that airman that could be listening to this podcast right now? What would you tell that person to help them out?
If you have someone that you trust, please don't be afraid to reach out. If you feel like you don't have someone, find a resource to talk, whether it's chaplain, mental health, there's hotlines, there's suicide prevention hotline, there's so many different avenues. So if you feel like you're alone, you're never, ever alone.
Thank you, Blythe. That's beautiful. And I want to thank you for sharing that incredible journey of yours. I'm inspired by you, truly. I'm so happy that you woke up frustrated in the hospital that morning. I'm so happy that day happened because you rebuilt yourself. You're an example to anyone who is down in the dumps to the point of wanting to end their life. And you are such an amazing example at what hard work on working on yourself, being real with yourself, transparent with yourself, and then investing in yourself and what that end product looks like. And you are absolutely crushing it now. You have this incredible family.
Give me too much credit.
No, you are. You really are. You're doing such a phenomenal job. You have a beautiful family. I'm proud of you, and I know anyone listening to this is proud of you. So I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart, seriously, for sharing that with us and everyone that's going to be listening to this. Thank you so much, Blythe.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for painting me out like that. I'm just doing this life like anybody else. My path that I've taken has just been a little different.
It's different, but it is relatable, and we thank you for sharing that. All right, everybody, that was the HeroFront podcast and the hero's journey of Master Sergeant Blythe Cooley. We are out.